episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
To another episode with another fascinating guest who is really involved in creating a better tomorrow for all of us. So as we typically do, start off with a little data today. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control, in 2018, over 36,000 people were killed and over 2 million were injured from motor vehicle crashes here in the United States, costing the nation estimated $44 billion in both medical expenses and work loss. The American Automobile Association, also known to many of us here in the U.S. as AAA, is a federation of motor clubs. It's throughout North America, a privately held nonprofit, a member association, serves over 60 million members, both in the United States and Canada, and it provides a variety of services to its members, including roadside assistance as well as other services. The AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety is a nonprofit, publicly supported charitable research and education organization dedicated to saving lives by preventing traffic crashes and reducing injuries when they occur. Initially, its emphasis was on safety protocols and driver education. Now the foundation has expanded its work to be a leader in the area of traffic safety with a focus on a variety of research priorities, including driver behavior and performance, emerging technologies, roadway systems, and vulnerable road users. We're honored today to be joined by Dr. David Yang, who's Executive Director of the AAA Foundation. He assumed this role back in October of 2016. Prior, Dr. Yang worked for the U.S. Department of Transportation as a variety of private consulting firms as well. Dr. Yang co-authored numerous peer-reviewed journal articles, conference papers, government reports on transportation topics. He's associate editor of the Journal of Intelligent Transportation Systems, Technology, Planning, and Operations, and serves on the editorial board of the International Journal of Transportation Science and Technology. Previously to this, he served as the chair of the Transportation Research Board User Performance Section. And he attended Purdue University, where he attained his bachelor's, master's, and PhD in civil engineering. Welcome, Dr. Yang, to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ira. It's a great honor to be here.
It's a real pleasure having you. I'd like to start off, as we typically do, with really passing you the microphone for a little bit, just to talk about yourself so we can get to know you. If you could take us back a little bit, sort of introduce yourself, a little bit sort of where you grew up, how you got interested in science and engineering and civil engineering, and a little bit of your pathway to this really important role at AAA. That'll be a really great way to lay the groundwork.
Great, thank you, Ira. So it is definitely a very interesting past. I just kind of very briefly, I was born in Taiwan, basically, and it was really interesting when I was early teen. Before I became a teenager, my family and I we immigrated to Honolulu, Hawaii. So I was basically I was born on an island, and then I grew up on a different island. So it's, for me, it's always wonderful. I feel very blessed to be able to kind of enjoy those island relaxing life. But as I was my junior in high school, I think I began to think about the future, and then really want to begin to kind of wonder about what can I do as an individual to make a dent to this society. And early on, when I was a kid, growing up in Taiwan, the first American I learned about in the textbook is Neil Armstrong. And so it was really interesting because I didn't learn about George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, but I learned about Neil Armstrong, how he is really the first man on the landing on the moon. And that really was inspirational to me. So when I was looking for a college to attend from all the way in the island of Hawaii, I began to look for a school that where as a kid I really idolized Neil Armstrong. So I figured out that he went to Purdue, and then back in the 80s. There's not a whole lot of internet search, but Purdue is well known for its reputation in engineering. So I decided to apply, and then I felt very fortunate that I got accepted. and then began to study at Purdue. And I chose the field of civil engineering because I was always pretty good at math, and I always enjoyed science. And I always, basically like to kind of figure out what can I, how can I improve certain things. So I think that's a knock for many engineer. We always want to do things to make it better, to make it more efficient. Um, and I feel that that's something I really have a lot of interest in. And then as I was finishing up my bachelor and master degree, this is in the mid '90s, and there's a field within transportation began to emerge because many large cities in the United States, they are constantly people get stuck on traffic. I'm sure if you live in places like Los Angeles, Washington D.C., New York, many of these major cities, they are really combating with this traffic congestion problem. So in the mid '90s, there's a field within transportation called the intelligent transportation system. The whole idea is try to use technologies on the road to better manage the flow of the traffic. Basically, so hopefully people can move more efficiently. And I got really interested in that field, so decided to pursue my PhD in that area. And so that's how I got started with the field of transportation. Is really trying to figure out, okay, this is what maybe I can do to help to resolve or reduce some of the traffic congestion issue. And but as I was working on my towards my PhD, I realized a lot of those technology that's being introduced basically to the society, basically here in the United States. Many of those technology, for example, that require interaction with the driver or the human user. But engineer, we have a typical tendency sort of design a system that works for me. As long as I get it, that's fine. Everyone else well understand that. So I became very interested into trying to figure out, okay, if we design a system, it's not only I need to use it, you, other people with different age group, people with different experience should be able to use that. So my PhD work is really kind of focused on that user component. And then another word that has been used in the field is called human factors. So basically using human factor, trying to design a system so that basically the end user will be able to use it more efficiently and effectively. So that's how my journey sort of started, really a kid back all the way in high school, want to really see the continental 48 states, and then really have a knock, kind of trying to figure out, okay, what can I do to improve certain things? That's really my journey. And then I feel very fortunate that throughout my career, I work in the federal government, I work in the private sector, and now basically as the executive director for AAA Foundation, to be able to conduct some really interesting research, and knowing that these research will make a difference and hopefully, be able to reduce some of the traffic injury and fatality we see on our roadway on a daily basis. So that's a quick kind of overview of my life and my career so far.
Wonderful, wonderful. You could do worse growing up in Hawaii, but
Sure.
Thank you for that introduction. Before we get to some of what you're doing with AAA currently, I wanted to go to, I went on your into your publications biography, and I pulled down these two very interesting articles that you wrote in 2013 and 2015, respectively. They were in Public Roads magazine, which was the quarterly magazine of the Federal Highway Administration. One is entitled "Why Drivers Do What They Do," and another was called "The Science and Art of Putting Drivers Under under the microscope, where you go into a lot of the technology, sort of very air traffic control, NORAD type stuff, where you're studying in virtual environments and so forth. I was just interested in if there were sort of some top line learnings, let's say, from the past few decades in this space of sort of why we do, or why we crash so much, and you know, has things changed in the sense that as we've moved from seat belts to airbag to multiple airbags to all this other cool technology we're going to be talking about, have we become more complacent? Have we become sort of worse drivers overall? What are some of the things that you learned of why we are crashing and injuring ourselves so much in cars nowadays?
Yeah, Ira, that's a really very interesting question, and that's why we are still doing a lot of research. So, let me take you back a little bit. You know,
Please.
earlier in your introduction, you mentioned you provided some statistic according to CDC. Actually, both CDC and the U.S. Department of Transportation, in particular, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. They have collected data, and on the annual basis, you know, you're absolutely right. There's over 30,000 people die on the road. So if you divide that, basically equate to about more than 100 people die on the roadway on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that has become a number really no one really talked about too much. You know, for example, if you have a plane crash, which will be very tragic,
Right,
and you know over 100 people die, you know a lot of times it's going to get to the international news. People will get coverage. People will talk about it. Yet, you know, every day on the road, we have over 100 people die due to various reasons. There was other government report that has basically that has analyzed why people crash, and basically what really boils down to when you look at all these statistics, it really points to that driver is a major factor in many past crashes. And these can involve with anything ranging from distraction, drowsiness, basically not be familiar with the roadway, all these reasons. And it is, to me, it is very tragic because, you know, in my current role right now at AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, a lot of time when I go out to give presentation, after the presentation, there are people who come up to me and tell me that, you know, told me a story about their son, their daughter, their parents, their sibling that got killed in a car crash. And for me, you know, a lot of people may look at these as just a number, right? 30,000 people, 36,000 people. However, each one of these crashes that reduce a death is a broken family. Someone's life got impacted. And that's how I kind of view this whole thing related to traffic safety, is that we need to bring more awareness to many drivers, to all the people who's using the road, understanding that sometimes when you make that split-second decision saying, well, I'm just going to go a little bit faster, right? But that a little bit fast speed of 5 miles, 10 miles per hour can be a difference between walking away from a crash versus you get struck and killed from a crash. And that's something I think for me, that's very important. And so, you know, basically ever since the 1990s, many of the car manufacturers in the United States has began to kind of look into way to make the car safer. And obviously the goal is to hopefully at those critical moments can help driver to prevent some crashes. And that led all the way in the recent about 10 years or so, a lot of development in the potential what we call automated vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you know, that future where we may have seen in some of the sci-fi movie or maybe in cartoon like Jetsons, that the car will drive by itself. So basically taking the human out of the loop completely, so we don't need to worry about it. What happened is that, you know, that I think that's a great concept, and I truly believe that we will get there somehow, someday, whether it's completely autonomous or, you know, basically very minimal involvement with the human. However, we still have a very, very long road ahead because there's so many facets, so many components that's in that will impact a lot of things. As you mentioned, one of the things is people feel complacent. Actually, in some of the study we have done in the recent year, we actually found that, where we found that when driver have some of the advanced driver assistance system, you know, these technology, for example, like this blind spot warning system, or like a lane departure warning system. People, after they use it for a while, we see basically what people do is they feel, well, if this technology is going to help me to monitor what's going on, then I can start doing something else. For example, I don't need to pay as close attention anymore, right? I can look at my cell phone and so forth. And that is, I think, one of the issue we are facing is that as many of these car manufacturers are introduce these technology, which is great. But however, there's a lack about, I think there's a gap between what these technology can do versus what drivers understand their capability as well as the limitation. I don't want to put any car maker or anyone on the spot, but you know, in past several years, there was several high profile crashes occur that involved with a very well-known, very popular type of vehicle, and many of those point to the fact that, you know, basically the individual who was basically those individual who was behind the wheel, they were not paying attention, or they feel comfortable enough that, you know, the car can tell them what to do. But the thing is that we are not there yet, Ira. So I think that's a misconception, and I think that we as a society, if we want to continue to move forward towards and continue to improve traffic safety, not only the car manufacturer need to continue to produce these great technology, but at the same time, driver and other road user need to be responsive, knowing, understanding what's the limitation, what's the capability, so that, you know, basically these technology can really serve their intended function, and then really help to kind of protect us instead of harming us. I think that's a gap there. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And taking that now a little further, you know, obviously we talked about sort of this transition from seatbelts, airbags, collision warning systems, driver arousal systems, obviously purely self-driving cars. What are you, as a researcher, most excited? What excites you the most in terms of? And I'll just throw some terms out there. Obviously, we've talked a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning in the past. Other technologies that are not confidential that you're excited about, and the same thing. What are there ones that you're not that excited about? Take us on a little walk there.
yeah, I think for me is any translation system that can help to improve safety, that can help to improve, you know, the efficiency of the operation, is something I would definitely be very welcoming. So really, that range from a lot of what we call a lot of these idea and concept, whether they are in the R&D stage or whether they are in, you know, they have been introduced to the market. I think those are great, and I think I really feel it is important continue for many people to continue to you know, devote energy, effort, and resources to do research to make sure that they are basically being implemented and being used to kind of protect the driver as well as other road users. What really, so I think that that's really kind of a more general answer. What really concerns me, and I alluded to that earlier in my comment, is people's misuse and abuse of these systems. And what I meant by that is that if you are expecting, for example, the blind spot warning system, right? The whole idea is that if you are driving currently, the current technology with blind spot warning system is there's a limitation. It provides the driver, alert the driver, there's a car in your blind spot that if you want to change lane, well, give you that warning. However, most of the, right now we still haven't got to a stage that, we have seen some of the blind spot warning system. If the vehicle right next to you is driving too fast, it may not be able to pick up. So there are limitations. And when people don't understand that, kind of saying, well, I don't need to look anymore. I don't need to look before I change lane because the blind spot warning system is going to tell me that. That's really a misuse and even some sort of thing, abuse of the system. There's some video on the YouTube where people are driving car that has some sort of automated feature, and then they are exhibiting what they can do while the car is driving, and they are doing something else. That's really abuse of the system. So I think to me, that's definitely a concern. And as a researcher, I also is quite concerned about some of the hype that has been shared by some media, some people who want to sell their product, that certain thing. I think many of the things people said is either they really didn't really understand the limitation and capability. Also, some other people, some manufacturers, they do want to sell their product, right? So I think it's a combination of those things. I think we as a community of people who's doing research in transportation, in automated vehicle, we need to do a better job to kind of share those information with the public. Exactly how? I think that's going to be a joint effort by multiple entities, all the way from the federal government to the private sector to the academia. So I think for me is I'm really excited to kind of see the future where you can see car that has a lot of great capability to take you from point A to point B safely and quickly. That I think I'm really looking forward to that future. But it's this in between process, I have a lot of concern, and also that a lot of time when people begin to misuse this system that cause a crash, every time when that happens, it's going to deter the progress of these advancements. So sometimes I do have mixed feeling about these. I think that it's going to take an effort of many people and many different fields to make sure that the right information is being shared, and everyone who are using the roadways understand their responsibility. So,
thank you. One of the portfolio baskets at the foundation is Roadway Systems, and in this particular basket is everything from infrastructure. Obviously,
right.
we need the road to be there, not to be hazardous, and then obviously technologies. Obviously, and you mentioned the Jetsons before. I'm a big fan. The road is not moving yet, but in between sort of where we are today and Jetsons moving highways, what are you excited about in terms of interesting roadway systems technologies?
Yeah. So when I was with the federal government of the United States, I had a project. I managed a project And that whole concept related to that project is that when car goes through intersection, there's no traffic signal anymore. Imagine that. So that's actually people have thought about those ideas, and I think for me is right now with the infrastructure in the United States. Well, I mean, before we even get to the future, I think some of the challenge we have in the United States right now is many of the infrastructure is aging, and and so that's definitely a very challenging thing to do. But for me, as a researcher and being with the federal government for many years, I really see that if basically a lot of time when I go out to talk to people about the transportation system, I usually like to preach about the three component. So the three component really, in my mind, for a transportation system is one is the infrastructure. That's everything from the roadway to the sign to the marking that's on the road. That's the first component. The second one are the vehicle. And then the third one are the user. User means not only driver, but all of the user who share the road, for example, pedestrians, cyclists, and so forth. So if these three components can work in harmony, then we will reach that utopia of transportation. Basically, everything will click so well, and we don't need to really, we can get to from point A to point B very quickly and safely. So, but when I was with the federal government in the, basically this is in the early 2010s. There's some of the people in that first wave of people who want to push for autonomous vehicle thought, well, they can do it without the support of the infrastructure. I think one of the lessons they learn quickly is those infrastructure need to play a great important component. If without the support of the infrastructure, your car may be very smart, may be very intelligent. However, there's going to be a situation that will come up. Your car doesn't know what to do because it's not within their database. So I think for me is these infrastructure. I think one of the things many people has also began to making investment upon is what we call connected infrastructure, where all the infrastructure are communicating. So that, for example, if there's a string of a vehicle and the vehicle is sending signal to the traffic signal and telling them, well, we have 10 vehicle, this is our speed, this is our location. So basically, so the traffic signal can kind of coordinate, so they can travel through a segment of street without running into any red light. And so I think that's really definitely a great start. But also, some of the more fundamental work that has been done, we've seen that in countries like Europe and in Asia as well. And obviously right now in some of the state in the US is, for example, variable speed limit. As they look at the traffic flow, how congested, how back up the traffic is on the segment of freeway, they'll be able to monitor, they'll be able to adjust the speed. So I think all these different components of infrastructure people are working on. And I think, someday if they all come together, then we'll get to that place where, you as a driver sitting in a vehicle, knowing that your vehicle, when it starts from, for example, your home to your workplace, your vehicle not only will be able to communicate with all other vehicles, telling other vehicle about what's going on with you, but also telling other infrastructure. That would be a great future. And I think that's when, as passenger or driver in a vehicle, you can truly relax, knowing that you are in that protection network and because your vehicle is communicating with other vehicle in infrastructure. I think I'm really excited to kind of see that in the future. And obviously it's going to take years. People has asked me in the past about any prediction. I said I don't want to give that prediction because there's going to be so many factors that can disrupt or interrupt the development and progress. But I really feel last year when I was at the conference, and basically one of the car manufacturer has shared their vision for the future, that they want to design a city that's basically on the foothill of Mount Fuji in Japan. That's fully autonomous. And so you have autonomous vehicle, you have autonomous bus, shuttle, and everything. So that entire city is connected. And I think it's great to be able to have this vision for the future, and knowing that, if we work together, if all the cars fell in the right places, we can get there. But again, I don't want to be someone who kind of continue to point cold water. There's still a lot of work ahead. So.
Absolutely, but it's exciting stuff. Very exciting, though, potential. Moving to the sort of the portfolio interest of vulnerable road users. Mentioned before we started the show, I spend a lot of time sort of in the longevity space. We are entering a time where people are getting older, we're living longer, going to be driving longer. My mother lived till she was almost 89. She was a great driver. I know people 60 years younger that they're not. But anyway, what are some of the things that we're learning about older drivers in terms of what is a proper time to continue to drive to? And are there things that maybe older drivers do better? We're saying that they grew up with a car that didn't have a seatbelt or things like this, versus the kids that are learning to drive today with all the bells and whistles. Any interesting insights on the elderly driver front?
Sure. All right. Before I talk about elderly driver in particular, let me just kind of provide you really our definition at AAA Foundation.
Okay.
What we consider as vulnerable road user, because that terminology could mean in different things for.
Sure.
So really, in our definition at AAA Foundation, vulnerable road user are those people who are either who has higher probability based on past statistics, being involved in crashes. That those are basically your older driver, your young novice driver. So that those are two groups. But we also include those other road users besides driver. For example, pedestrians, cyclists. And right now, there could be as the city and state continue to see different type of micro transportation, other type of people who's sharing the road. So that's our definition, kind of vulnerable road user.
Okay.
Older driver, teen driver, and others such as a pedestrian and cyclists. Now, the reason this is based on statistics we have seen, is that one of the reasons the teen driver crash a lot is because inexperienced.
Okay.
A lot of times they are new, so there's a potential hazard. They have not experienced before, so their reaction to certain things may be slow. And also, we have seen some of the teen and new driver who tend to be aggressive in terms of the driving and so forth. We have seen study. We have actually videoed a few years ago. I was in a meeting. I saw a video of a teen girl who basically was very, very aggressive. Not only she crossed a double yellow line, but she was passing someone. She was tailgating and passing someone. As she was passing in the video, she knows she's being recorded. She's looking at the other driver, kind of showing that I beat you. So those are the really some of the few of the reasons that teen driver group has higher probability of crashing into a vehicle. Now, come back to the older driver. One of the things we recognize, I think we all realize, is that as we age, our capability become kind of react to certain situation or process information become slower. Now, I'm saying that in a very general sense because you point out a very important thing is there any age that's really that we should tell driver not to drive anymore? Well, based on what we have done, our data we gathered so far is that age, in a general sense, has a high correlation with the capability or the decline to drive, to react. However, we can't just kind of draw a line and say, okay, anyone that's about 85, you can't drive in because, as you have pointed out, like your mom, when she was 89, she can be a very good driver. Other people who are there in their 60 or 70, their scale because illness, because physical fitness could decline so bad they are not fit to drive anymore. But on the general basis, as we see that as people age, their capability to react to a driving situation, and also the time to process that, knowing what to do, basically while decline. But one advantage that older driver has is all the experience. We see many drivers that maybe they are reacting just 0.5 seconds slower, but they can rely on their experience to mitigate through a potential crash. So we have seen that. At AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, we are currently actually collecting a data set, and this is basically close to 3,000 older senior driver across 5 different regions of the United States. And I believe that we, by the time we finish this project in 2022, we're going to have the largest database in the United States, at least, on older driver. And the reason we started out this project, this is a little bit before my time as the, before I joined AAA Foundation, was really kind of seeing that we see this gap where, not many other entity in the U.S. I think a lot of people has interest in knowing that Asian, we need to do something to help the Asian driver, but not many people has invested enough effort. So AAA Foundation, this is all the way back in 2015, I believe, began to kind of plan for this study. And I came on board in 2016 to kind of begin to oversee, and they started the data collection. And what we want to do is after we finish all the data collection at 2022, we're going to continue to mine the data, to analyze the data, so we can continue to share all these lessons learned from this cohort of close to 3,000 older driver. And then hopefully they can provide some very helpful information about prevention, about something that older driver can help. What we have seen, Ira, is we know that many of within our study, basically we have seen that some of the typical behavior is that many older driver within our study, they tend to avoid driving at nighttime because basically the eyesight issue. Many older drivers do not feel comfortable making left turn anymore, so they would drive on road that can minimize left turn. So we see that there's basically, at least within our own study of these close to 3,000 people, these 3,000 driver, they are, as they are aging, they are figuring out a way to compensate and so forth. And what we also learned based on our group of people who volunteer in the study is that some of our folks that's within this study, they don't really talk about this issue as they are aging, as they don't feel more comfortable. They don't talk about it with their grown children about their decline. Because I think one of the issues we have found is here, especially here in the United States, is that when you take a car key away from someone, it's more than that key. It's also, a lot of times it's an implication, well, from this point on, this elderly person need to depend on someone else
Mm-hmm.
to take him or her to grocery shopping, to doctor's office, and so forth. So that's definitely one of the issue. We are seeing that some people, even though they realize they may not be fit to drive anymore, they still want to drive the car because there's there's not a whole lot of alternative. And I really, this is going back to the future about automated vehicle. I think that's where automated vehicle can be very, very helpful. For example, if a automated shuttle bus can be placed somewhere, so going through some retirement, community on a scheduled basis to take people who live in that community to hospital, to shopping. I think that would be a great way to kind of utilize these technology to serve a vulnerable driving population. So it is, we're looking for definitely to kind of finish the data collection in 2 years, and we're hopeful that we're gonna continue to have a lot of publication on our website to share all these information with all other people. And we feel really good about this because during the past few years, we have researchers from other countries who has reached out to us as well, has interest to kind of learn about what we has gathered so far, some of our conclusion based on our first 2 year data. So.
Very interesting. Dr. Yang, coming back to your human factor expertise, I just wanted, there's two, well, this is one category, but I'll divide two things. Obviously, growing up, and myself learning to drive in my 50s now, I don't remember road rage from until recently as being a thing that's in the news all the time. I just don't ever remember it in the sort of the first two-thirds of my life. On top of that, there's this a theme that we heard quite recently in the news, actually, during this COVID era, on sort of this increase in kind of crazy driving during the pandemic. I don't know how much related these are, but any interesting sort of psychological learnings about why we're seeing this uptick in road rage events in recent years, and any interesting sort of recent insight in terms of pandemic driving problems?
Yeah, recently I was involved in a conference, kind of talk about this issue. And one of the interesting thing, within at AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, we have a separate study. It's what we call the American Driving Survey. That's kind of basically we have the daily data collection, trying to understand, how much people drive and so forth. And also earlier when I mentioned the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they have also recently released a few reports. And what we have seen, this is based on preliminary data, is that during the past 6 months, the number of vehicle crashes in the United States has decreased. However, the rate of crashes actually went up compared to actually before the COVID pandemic. So what that means is that basically people drive less, but the probability of people getting into crash actually went up. So, and that, that's to me is that's very interesting. Now we haven't dived into the data enough to kind of provide a conclusive finding about what's going on. But you can see that. So one of the things we have seen, and you kind of alluded to this in your question, is that when the road, all of a sudden, when there's only a few cars on the road instead of bumper to bumper traffic, there's a tendency people drive faster. For example, on the highway, on the freeway, right? The posted speed limit may be 55 miles per hour. But when you are the one of the handful of the car on the road, you can go in theory as fast as you can. And some people does that. So speed is really a component. Speeding is really a issue. We're gonna release a report in January of next year, kind of talk about how impact of speed will harm the driver. And really, when we see that when a car crash into an object, basically there's going to be a change of force. When that change of force is gonna only, if it's only sometimes only go up by 5 miles per hour or so forth, that can be a difference between you walk away from crash versus you die from the crash. So speeding is an issue. But also we see, for example, people could have tendency kind of run red lights because there's not many enforcement. And then actually on my way to the office earlier, I just witnessed that someone, there's a light has already turned red. This driver just had to go through because there's really no other vehicle in front of it. So I think that's definitely that issue. And again, I didn't do enough. I have not done much research related to road rage, so I can't really comment on that. But I think that, you know, based on the data, what we have seen both that's being released by the federal government as well as our own data, you know, in a preliminary sense, is that we see that yes, the number of crashes has reduced during the past 6 months. Because people overall travel less.
Sure.
However, the rate actually of crashes actually went up, and that is a concern. I think that is most likely can be attributed, or part of it can be attributed to people become more aggressive in terms of driving faster, perhaps not paying as much attention to the traffic signal and so forth. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I was just off the top of my head, I was wondering if it was a U.S. only phenomena or whether you see these types of things in other countries. But anyway, I appreciate your knowledge across these domains. It's really a fascinating area. One thing, Dr. Yang, before I let you go, just I'd love for you. Obviously, you've had a tremendous career in government, in the private sector, in nonprofit world now. Typically, you know, you sort of ask this wrap-up question about important mentors and influencers during the course of your career. Anybody that you would like to mention, shout out to, that has been really instrumental in your pathway to date and keeping you very interested and involved, please take the floor and shout out to anyone that you want, or mention anyone you want.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really, I feel very fortunate is that I could not have the career I have today without the help of many other people. You know, one of the person, when you talk about mentor that come to my mind right away, is my PhD advisor at Purdue University, Dr. John Fricker, who is faculty in Purdue's civil engineering department for many years. He was really someone who believed in me when I was looking for a research topic, and someone who I constantly, basically a lot of time when I have kind of tough question, I don't know what to do. I still, even as now, I would reach out to him and said, Dr. Fricker, what do you think about this? And so that's someone I really feel that has really, you know, provided me a lot of great example about, you know, about how to mentor others, how to kind of provide advice. I think also, in addition to that, is throughout my career in the private sector, in the federal government, I also at different point in time, I do have people who will come up to me and then share certain advice, share certain of their experience, and those I really appreciate it. I think, basically I still remember my first job out in Seattle, Washington, working in a consulting firm.
Mm-hmm.
And the gentleman who hired me was, his name is Al Grieve, Mr. Grieve. He was a Purdue graduate as well. So it was really interesting because I called him and I kind of explained to him I was about to finish up my PhD work and is looking for a job, and he said to me, oh, he started to laugh. I said, did I say something funny? He said, no. He said, I'm also a Purdue graduate. When can you start to work? When can you join us? And I said, you mean you don't want to interview? He said, no. He said, if you want to come in for an interview, you can do that. But yeah, we're gonna have you join us. It was really interesting, but he was really someone I appreciate because he gave me that first opportunity to kind of say, this is a young engineer researcher, has a lot of passion, and I'm gonna give him a shot. And then so that's another person I really appreciate. I think for me is that's how I sort of learned that from these folks who has very graciously shared all these experience with me. And then that's what I'm trying to do as well, is when I see young researcher, young engineer, or young young professional who want to know something and approach me, I'll be happy to kind of share my knowledge, because I got to where I am today, not only because of hard work, but because other people at the right time gave me those opportunities. And I want to be able to do that to help to bring on the next generation of the people who are willing to invest their career to improve transportation and improve traffic safety. So.
Wonderful. I appreciate that message. Very, very nice way of wrapping up. It's been very inspiring listening to your knowledge and your career. Wishing you the best at the organization moving forward. For everybody that's going to be watching this episode or listening on the podcast, you've been listening to Dr. David Yang, Executive Director at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, doing really amazing research and saving lives by preventing traffic crashes and reducing injuries. Dr. Yang, thank you for taking the time to come on the show today, and thank you for creating this better tomorrow and safer tomorrow for all of us. It's been really a great time.
Ira, thank you so much. Thank you.